Everyday Life with Guardsmares, Chapter 25. Artemis Sparkshower's point of view. Specialist Artemis Sparkshower was having a grand old time with her new comrade, Sergeant Ebenshield. Barring a quick break to go grab some lunch, they had spent the past few hours swapping stories about life in the Guard. Or, well, not much so swapping really, more like Artemis tells every one of her stories. The Bat Pony didn't share any of her own stories though. Artemis didn't ask her to. Don't ask, don't tell was the rule after all. It was a shame though, because the Pegasus was sure that she must have had some good ones. Ebenshield was an older mare, at least in her 30s, and she did admit that she had been a soldier all of her life. In spite of her silence, it didn't feel like the sergeant was really holding back the conversation, because she was still engaged in it. Ebenshield congratulated Artemis for her successes, laughed along with the funny moments, and expressed sympathy for the times when things got tough. And though she didn't venture into her own history, she provided some good advice and had a few interesting questions about equestrian society. She did still occasionally lean in awfully close though, which could be unsettling, but Artemis had such a good time sharing it that it went right through their regular lunch hour. And it was only once that they were both feeling a bit worn out that Artemis went to grab a quick bite. Alone, unfortunately. Ebenshield declined her invitation to the barracks dining room, saying that she had some private arrangements in the palace. It wasn't really a surprise. Artemis could just imagine the stir that she would be causing walking into the mess hall. Still, it was a disappointment. Back in their quarters after a late lunch, Ebenshield was nowhere to be found. Maybe her lunch ran late, or maybe she had another appointment in the afternoon, though she hadn't mentioned anything like that. Part of Artemis still wondered if her private arrangements for lunch were more sanguine than anything in the Royal Guard kitchen could serve up. It wasn't that the hours of pleasant conversation hadn't convinced Artemis that Ebenshield was a friendly pony who could be a cordial participant in a polite conversation. They had. But still, the mysteries surrounding her race were still there, and so the questions lingered around half-answered, like unconfirmed scouting reports. Without any pony to talk to about it, Artemis found herself slipping back into the same semi-frustrated, semi-confused, slightly afraid fugue state as in the morning. It was 3:15 when Corporal Bound finally returned from the library to get ready for her shift. Trotting in with a huge book slung over her back, she gave Artemis a little more than a polite nod as she walked towards her door.
Sparkshower? Hello, Corporal. How'd your reading go?
As she passed the Pegasus behind the sofa, Artemis could see that Corporal Bound's eyes had a sort of glazed over look, like some pony hitting the books hard to study for an exam.
It went. Gosh, that was a brisk wind just now.
She decided to try and clear the clouds to let some sunshine in.
I had a good long talk with Sergeant Ebenshield this morning.
Corporal Bound's eyes didn't perk up, although she did stop to turn to face the Pegasus.
She was asking questions about the Royal Engineer, the things that we'd done, the Battle of New Stirrup Bridge, that sort of stuff. Then we just got more into my own stories, I guess.
Honor Bound just eyed her with that tired, detached stare of hers. It wasn't actually far from what Sergeant Ebenshield did when she was first introduced, Artemis had to admit. Maybe a little news would perk her up.
Oh, did you hear that Lieutenant Killfeather and his squadron packed up and moved their Pades the boat to the old Stirrup Bridge after we beat them?
Still nothing. It was starting to feel a bit awkward there, like one Pegasus struggling against a whole hurricane. Artemis forced an awkward smile.
What a piece of work, huh?
Corporal Bound stared at her for a good long time, and at last, she sighed.
I'm not really surprised, Specialist. Colts like him don't know how to take no or accept a loss when they don't have to. Glamour Spear was right. My spawn didn't get to be top air superiority fighter in Equestria without being dangerous. Yeah.
She picked up her shoulders and continued to her room, but there was still something else nagging at Artemis's mind.
So, what do you think of our new team member?
Honor stopped where she was, continuing to stare at a door.
You don't want to know what I think of her, Sparkshower.
Still stopped, the corporal looked over her shoulder at the specialist.
Especially not if you've been hitting it off with her all day.
The corporal couldn't possibly believe the same awful stories about bat ponies that Glamour Spear did, could she? Most of that stuff was just rumors and myths, she was sure of it. And wasn't Honor supposed to be the sensible, level-headed leader of the group? Furrowing her brow, Artemis gave a little confused wave of her head.
I don't understand, Corporal. What's wrong?
Sighing again, she put down her book and walked back over to the sofa.
Did she tell you why she was here, Sparkshower?
She shook her head.
She didn't talk about herself very much.
Honor curled part of her mouth up in a scowl.
I figured. Same DADT crap.
The Royal Guard's policy on bat ponies was frustrating to be sure. What Artemis hadn't spent hiking up the mountain in the morning or chatting with a new sergeant during the day, she'd spent trying to piece together the answers to unanswerable questions about bat ponies. But that didn't make her dislike Ebenshield, so why was the corporal so upset? Clearing her throat and sighing again, Honor stepped over to her.
I don't like the sergeant because it's politics that got her assigned to the squad. What?
Surely the sergeant didn't have any family in the Guard who would have landed her a relatively cushy job like VIP service.
I'm not sure I follow you, Corporal. Listen, Sparkshower, have you ever heard of a Night Guard serving in a Royal Guard squad, or vice versa? No, I don't think we even conduct joint operations with them. That's right. we don't. And can you imagine a bad pony being assigned as a VIP guard for any pony other than an alien visitor to our world? Some pony who never grew up to fear Nightmare Moon, or who looked worriedly up at the sky on Nightmare Night? Some pony who never heard hushed stories around a campfire or in a tavern about horrible bat-winged creatures coming to snatch away good ponies in the darkness?
She made a good point. The Royal Engineer took Sergeant Ebenshield with him to a Coulthard store to see his new sports outfit. It was one of the few stories that she shared with her. Artemis simply couldn't imagine any normal kind of very important pony who actually was a pony wanting anything to do with her kind. Most of them would just be as horrified as Glamour was, or as shocked as Artemis had been, and would probably dismiss her immediately. Only Anonymous, ignorant of the prejudice against her race, would treat her like he did any other kind of pony. And from what she'd seen, he was a courteous and friendly colt. It was little wonder that Sergeant Ebenshield said that she thought he was very pleasant, and admitted that she was happy to have him as her VIP. Corporal Bound circled a hoof up in the air.
You see what I'm saying, don't you, Specialist? Some pony up in command wants to make the first moves to integrate the Royal Guard and the Night Guard. And when they see that the Royal Engineer needs a fourth member for his Quaternion, they jump at the chance to put their plan into motion. They don't think that maybe an alien new to our world could use some pony with social experience. They ignore the note that I asked Lieutenant Violetta to put into the requisition form on that very topic. And they don't consider the impact that an alien creature walking around with a bat pony is going to have on every pony else. Anonymous mates with big names in society, members of the court, wealthy financiers like JP Mustang, even Galloway Bismount is a known name.
Lowering her hoof, the corporal shook her head.
They don't even bother to arrange any kind of official introductions or joint training so that we can actually get to know each other. Instead, it's don't ask, don't tell as usual, and they just throw Ebenshield in here without even her having completed the VIP service training.
Honor leaned in close, almost whispering in Artemis's ear.
It's bullshit, Sparkshower. And a VIP like the Royal Engineer deserves better than to be the victim of a political experiment.
The swear word was a shock. Honor was really upset about this. Turning over what she said, Artemis could only think of one reply.
But what if the experiment works, Corporal?
Honor just shook her head.
It's still a bad way to do things. I told Anonymous the same thing yesterday when I apologized for making the wrong choice at New Star Bridge. What? The wrong choice? But Corporal, we swept them from the skies!
Tensing, Honorbound's reply came with a hard edge and a slight scowl.
It was still the wrong decision. I barely won. Glamour Spear wouldn't have won without the Royal Engineer bending the rules to act as her spotter. And you?
Softening her tone, she lowered her haunches, pausing. Artemis remembered how afraid she'd been, and even though Joker didn't scare her even one bit now, she started to close up as she remembered how close she'd come to losing.
I know. If he hadn't given me that pep talk, I might not have won either.
Honor nodded.
And that's what made it the wrong choice. I didn't know what we all were capable of. I made a decision based on missing information that I should have known.
Artemis couldn't explain it, but deep inside she felt that Honor must be wrong. It was frustratingly hard to put into words, though. Her vexation came out as she lifted her head and raised her voice.
No, I don't agree, Corporal. Maybe you've made a mistake by not doing enough reconnaissance, but even though I was the one who said we should just give up, I'm glad that you chose to fight.
Almost instinctively, she spread her wings, and with a single powerful flap, she took to the air. However, without her armor to weigh her down, she came close to crashing into the ceiling. As if it was all deliberate, she spread out her feathers as far as they could go, as much to stop the upward motion as it was to hold her in the air.
A good soldier is compelled to evaluate what's happened so that they can apply what they've learned. But when we're out in the field, we have to push it.
That was her favorite quote from her favorite book on the Commandant's reading list, Top Pony. As she floated back down to the ground, Artemis pounded one hoof into the other and then pointed at Honor.
You pushed it out there, Corporal. And you pushed us out there too. Now that I've fought against the nimble flyer like Joker and not only survived but won, I'm not going to be afraid like that again. And I bet you that even Glamour Spear learned something about how her own magic works too.
Taking a bit of a reckless chance, she jabbed one hoof into her stone-faced leader's chest.
And you must have learned something as well. At the very least, you learned what the guards ponies you lead can do, and you learned that your VIP knows a thing or two about leadership and resourcefulness.
Wearing a confident smile, she looked up into the steady, emotionless eyes of the leader of the Quaternion. Leader for now, anyway. Her expression didn't shift, but she did nod her head ever so slightly.
Maybe you're right, Sparkshower.
Looking off to the side, her nostrils flared as she inhaled sharply through them.
I'll think about what you said.
Corporal Bound turned back to face her.
But I stand by my words about Ebenshield. Whoever's pulling the strings on this is doing it without a good plan. And I'm sure that she knows why she's here too, but she refuses to break DATT even though it's a nonsense rule in this scenario.
Artemis pressed on.
But what if she's a good soldier? Then, she's a good soldier, and she'll be useful in a fight. But I still wanted the guard to do better for Anonymous because I think he deserves it.
There was nothing Artemis could really say to that. Of course she wanted the best for her VIP too. At the very least, from her experience in talking with her, Honor was right that Ebonshield was not the one to guide the Royal Engineer through Equestrian Society. But that didn't mean that she couldn't help. Maybe she had some other talents that he could use. Honor interrupted her train of thought before it could leave the station.
I've got to get ready for my shift. We can talk about this more later if you want.
Oh, sure, Corporal. Thanks.
Before she walked back to her door, Honor licked her lips and looked up at the ceiling.
And maybe I'm wrong about Ebonshield too. Maybe things are gonna sort themselves out on that front as well.
That brought a smile to Artemis's face.
I hope so, Corporal.
Might be a bumpy road to go on, but I'm sure they'll be friends in no time. Anyways, let's get on to our very friendly donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, CrazyKiller557, Stu Hex, Will, Omicron Lyrae, Chris, Michael Deller Moore, Dospel, Delta Omega, Jack Hadge, Rinsleth9852, Madman Stan, Leslie Perkett, Drake Lovedragon, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, LineGod12, Sorcerer Constantine, Hudzaza, Conver, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.